Core supporters, well, as you can imagine, the fallout has begun. The Indiana Fever are literally taking what looks like the most valuable women's athlete asset that has come around in I don't know how many years. Certainly for women's basketball, they are taking this asset, an asset that I contend is worth more than every player in the WNBA combined.
It started with a brutal, off-ball, cheap shot that went viral. Then came the bizarre press conferences, the thinly veiled insults from veteran players, and the shocking decision to leave her off the Olympic team. The arrival of Caitlin Clark was meant to be a triumph for the WNBA. Instead, it's exposed a deep-seated jealousy and resentment that's threatening to tear the league apart from the inside. This isn't just about tough defense or a rookie paying her dues. This is about a league that seems determined to sabotage its own biggest star, and we're about to show you exactly how they're doing it.
News that Caitlin Clark is out with a groin injury. Now, if you guys have been watching the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark play over the past 3 games, it is very clear that Caitlin Clark is not feeling like Caitlin Clark. She has only made 1 3-pointer in her last 3 games, and even just last game, she only had 6 points. But it wasn't only her performance on the court that was worrying fans, it was also just her demeanor, her energy. It felt like something was wrong. She wasn't hyping up the crowd like she normally does, and even in her pre-game routine, she was doing some things differently.
Before the chaos erupted, Caitlin Clark was a walking, talking economic miracle. The numbers she pulled were not just good for women's basketball, they were staggering for sports in general. For years, the WNBA had struggled for mainstream attention, with games often playing to half-empty arenas and modest television audiences. Then Clark arrived. Suddenly, arenas that typically had thousands of empty seats were selling out in minutes. The Indiana Fever, long a low-profile team, became the hottest ticket in the country. Teams were forced to move their home games against the Fever to larger NBA venues just to accommodate the unprecedented demand. The secondary market was even more absurd, with ticket prices skyrocketing to levels that rivaled marquee NBA matchups and championship events. It was pure, unadulterated hype, and it translated directly into money and attention.
The WNBA don't think like we think. The WNBA ain't forced to run a business because it's subsidized. The WNBA don't have to do what most regular people have to do in order to be successful. The WNBA is trying to piss us off on purpose. Guys, the WNBA wants to go back to obscurity. The WNBA is trying their best to make sure nothing changes what this league represents.
The phenomenon wasn't just contained to live audiences. The television ratings were astronomical, shattering records that had stood for decades. Her debut was the most watched WNBA game in over 20 years, pulling in millions of viewers and decisively beating out major NHL playoff games and MLB matchups airing at the same time. On the day of the WNBA draft, her Indiana Fever jersey became the top-selling jersey for any athlete in any sport across all leagues on the Fanatics network. Think about that. She outsold Tom Brady, LeBron James, and Patrick Mahomes. She wasn't just a player, she was a one-woman stimulus package, a golden goose laying multi-million-dollar eggs every time she stepped on the court. The WNBA had finally found its messiah, the figure who could carry the league into a new era of prosperity. But it turns out not everyone was ready to be saved.
Start with the most important question of the day. Glad y'all are here for this one. Are you worried about Caitlin Clark long-term?
No, I am not. Every great athlete goes through this, particularly great athletes who are breaking barriers. And I think that Caitlin Clark is doing exactly that. And so I watched Steph Curry go through this. Okay, so it was ankle issues at the beginning of his career, raised some questions. He had to find a solution and fight his way through it. He wasn't getting beat up, but he was having physical issues.
The welcome party didn't last long. It quickly became clear that on the court, a different kind of reception was waiting for her. The physicality she faced went beyond the typical rookie treatment and veered into something far more malicious and calculated. The breaking point, the moment that went viral and exposed the ugly underbelly of the situation, came during a game against the Chicago Sky. In a dead ball situation that had nothing to do with active play, player Kennedy Carter walked up to Clark before an inbound pass and brutally hip-checked her to the floor. There was no ball in play, no attempt at a defensive stance, just a blatant, blindsiding cheap shot delivered with intent.
So now Caitlin Clark is banged up. She will not play again tonight. So the physicality, she's getting roughed up. The league has an off season. How do we defend her? Well, it's pretty obvious how people want to defend her. They're trapping, double teaming, getting very physical. And now she's banged up. So her first 6 games, she was Caitlin Clark. In her last 3 games, she's averaging 12 a game and shooting 27%. She is not healthy.
The clip exploded online, but it was the audio that made it even more chilling. Hot mics and lip readers caught Carter clearly calling her a beach right before leveling her. This wasn't a hard screen or an aggressive box out. It was an assault, a premeditated act of aggression designed to send a message not just to Caitlin, but to the millions of new fans watching. Your hero isn't safe here, and we don't care that you're watching. It was a symbolic moment that perfectly encapsulated the simmering resentment that was beginning to boil over. The league's new face was being treated like an enemy combatant, and this was only the beginning of her hostile welcome.
So the Indiana Fever is not slick at all. They have Caitlin Clark out with a growing injury, and they have her scheduled day by day, right? So either 2 things is happening. Either she really don't have a growing injury, and they're trying to let her rest so she can play in the game against Paige Buckners when they play the Wings tomorrow. And given that Caitlin Clark haven't had like her best game the last few games, they probably just like, okay, take the day off, girl, and come back ready to hoop.
The physical shot was only half the story. The real damage came from the league's response, or rather, the stunning lack of one. In the immediate aftermath of the Carter foul, the referees on the court who had a clear view of the play simply called it a common, away from the ball foul. They didn't even bother to review it, despite the obviously non-basketball nature of the act. It was only after a massive public outcry and media firestorm that the league office hours later upgraded it to a flagrant 1 penalty, essentially a slap on the wrist. There was no suspension, there was no major fine, there was no strong decisive statement from the commissioner's office declaring that its brightest star and biggest asset would be protected from such flagrant attacks. The official silence was deafening.
It is no secret that Caitlin Clark has been struggling in her shooting since coming back from injury. She had that big game right after the initial leg injury where they played the Liberty, they beat the Liberty. She had 30-something, Sabrina had 30-something. It was a fantastic game. But since then, she has been really struggling from the field. There's been reports of her maybe having her migraine issues again. There's been reports of her in interviews, she's been coughing a lot and kind of sniffling, was she sick? And now she is out for tonight's game because of a groin injury. And even in her post-game interview the other night, she said, it felt good coming out of my hands, and then it just wasn't going in. They feel good. They feel like typical Caitlin Clark shots.
To make matters worse, Carter's teammates and coach seemed to revel in the controversy, fanning the flames with their bizarre post-game behavior. Angel Reese, another prominent rookie, was seen on the broadcast jumping off the bench and celebrating the foul with a wide grin. In the post-game press conference, Chicago's coach claimed he didn't even see the play, a laughable assertion given it was the most talked about moment of the game. Carter herself refused to answer any questions about it, offering a dismissive next question to reporters. It was a masterclass in denial and disrespect, signaling to the world that this kind of behavior was, if not explicitly encouraged, then at least tacitly approved within their locker room. The league had a chance to set a standard, and instead it allowed a culture of hostility to fester in the open.
But it's a tough blow not only to Caitlin because we know that she loves to be on the court. It's a tough blow for the Indiana Fever because that is their superstar. Whether she is playing to the best of her abilities or not, they are still a better team with her on the court. And it's also a huge blow to the WNBA. Whether some fans like it or not, it was proven the last time that she was out with injury that the WNBA does better when she is on the court. The WNBA ratings across the league dropped by over 50% when Caitlin Clark was out with injury. And this is obviously such a crucial time and a crucial year for the league because they go go into CBA negotiations at the end of the year.
The Kennedy Carter incident wasn't an isolated event. It cracked open the door to a much bigger, more uncomfortable truth. This wasn't just about one player or one team. A quiet civil war was brewing within the WNBA. The league's veterans, the so-called old guard, seemed to openly resent the very phenomenon that was making them all more famous and, ironically, putting more money in all of their pockets. Subtle jabs in interviews and not-so-subtle comments on social media began to surface. Players complained about the intense media attention Clark received, seemingly annoyed that the spotlight wasn't being shared equally, even though her spotlight was illuminating the entire league.
And I can't believe I'm coming to this conclusion. Guys, it is clear the WNBA operation itself doesn't know what it's doing. And now it's clear that the Indiana Fever does not know what it's doing. But here's the sad part, guys. This ain't on accident. This is on purpose.
The controversy over charter flights became another bizarre point of contention. For years, players had rightly complained about flying commercial. The league finally adopted charter flights for all teams, a move made possible almost entirely due to the massive increase in revenue and interest generated by Clark. Yet some veterans discussed it with a tone of resentment, as if this long overdue progress was somehow tainted because she was the catalyst. It painted a picture of a league deeply divided, where a powerful faction of established players viewed their new cash cow not with gratitude, but with bitter envy. They weren't just competing on the court, they were fighting a behind-the-scenes battle for relevance against a rookie who had effortlessly stolen it from them.
Every great athlete you can think of coming in, if there were great expectations, there were hurdles that they had to overcome. And so I agree. I think she's had a lot on her plate. This is not Iowa. This is not Kansas anymore, Toto. This is the WNBA. This is the world. And she's got a lot on her shoulders. But I've seen every player, great player, who's had to adjust to that and accommodate it. And I have no doubt that she will do that, whether it's physical or mental.
Just when you thought the internal drama couldn't get any more intense, the ultimate bombshell dropped, confirming every suspicion about the establishment's bizarre attitude toward its new star. Caitlin Clark was left off the Team USA roster for the Paris Olympics. The decision was, to put it mildly, stunning. From a purely basketball perspective, arguments could be made that a team of veterans offered more chemistry, but from a business, marketing, and growth perspective, it was an act of organizational self-sabotage on a global scale. Clark was, without question, the single most famous and marketable female basketball player on the planet. Leaving her at home was like the 1992 Dream Team, leaving Michael Jordan behind to focus on team cohesion.
Caitlin, when did you guys find out about this groin injury, and how much of an absence do you expect from her beyond today?
Yeah, late last night. I think it's very much a day-to-day thing, how she responds to treatment. I stay in my lane and let our strength and conditioning and our physical, our AT staff do what they do best. But yeah, I found out late last night, and then we'll treat it day to day.
Back-to-back a factor at all with that?
I mean, I don't know if it's a factor from a physical standpoint, from an athletic training standpoint. Certainly in my mind, it is. But at the same time, C's shown that she's tough and she's a quick healer. So we'll see. Was it something?
The fallout was immediate and immense. Reports surfaced that NBC, the network broadcasting the Olympics, was devastated. They had been planning to build a significant portion of their basketball marketing and storytelling around her journey. Her presence would have guaranteed millions of casual viewers for the women's tournament. Instead, the selection committee chose a roster that, while talented, lacked a single figure with Clark's magnetic pull. This wasn't just a snub, it felt like a betrayal. It escalated the conflict from locker room jealousy to an institutional decision, feeding the growing narrative that the powers that be, for some inexplicable reason, were actively working against their own best interests and the growth of their own sport.
I'm keeping it real. All right, that's the draw, that's the aura, that's the brand. She is the WNBA. I've said, I contend she ought to be, her three-point shot should have already been changed. That should be the logo of the WNBA. Of course, the old school WNBA fans, all about this many of them that existed, that makes them furious. I don't care. Y'all can keep trying to gatekeep this league all you want. I don't care. They're trying to take this asset Stephanie White seems to be completely in over her head. Once again, Jason Whitlock said it the other day, and I pointed right at my television screen, which is over to the right of me, when I was watching Whitlock, and he said they need to hire an NBA coach like Mark Jackson.
Every one of these decisions, the uncalled fouls, the public resentment from peers, the Olympic snub, has a direct and potentially catastrophic economic consequence. This isn't just about hurt feelings or sports debate, it's about the bottom line. The constant physical battery she endures on the court puts Clark at an elevated risk of injury. As was proven when she missed time with a minor injury, her absence instantly tanks ratings and attendance. The Caitlin Clark effect flatlines the moment she's not on the court. The league becomes instantly less relevant and the buzz evaporates. This is not a sustainable model for a league that has become almost entirely dependent on one player for its newfound growth.
Where she's a lot like Michael Jordan is the physicality of the league. And basketball has always been this way. If you can't figure out how to stop somebody, Steph Curry faced some of this. In basketball, the answer is always get physical with them. Make them uncomfortable. Rick Pitino was on yesterday and talked about Caitlin Clark.
She's a great passer. She reminds me of Steph Curry when Steph Curry came into the league. She's doing what Steph did early on. She has unbelievable range. She has great vision. She's a terrific passer. You know, she's physically a little weak, but she'll get stronger as time goes on. But she really understands how to play, and she reminds me of the female version of Steph Curry. Incredible range.
This volatility couldn't come at a worse time. The WNBA is currently in negotiations for a new, massive media rights deal that could secure its financial future for generations to come. The value of that deal is almost entirely dependent on the eyeball-grabbing power of Caitlin Clark. By failing to protect her from injury, and by alienating her massive fan base with the baffling Olympic decision, the league is actively devaluing its own product at the most critical financial moment in its history. They are telling potential broadcast partners that their biggest star might not be available, either due to injury or because the league itself chooses to sideline her. It's like a company actively trying to lower its stock price right before a merger. This baffling chain of events is so consistently counterintuitive that it leaves you with one of two terrifying conclusions. The first is that the WNBA and its affiliated bodies are the most incompetently run organizations in professional sports. This theory suggests they are so blinded by archaic traditions and petty internal politics that they are simply incapable of recognizing the golden goose in their hands, even as it lays diamond eggs at their feet. It paints a picture of a league completely out of its depth, fumbling a historic opportunity through sheer ineptitude and a stunning lack of foresight. But the other option is far more sinister, that this is, in some way, deliberate. Is it possible that the league's establishment and its veteran stars are so threatened by her meteoric rise that they are collectively trying to humble her? Is it a coordinated effort to knock the rookie down a peg, to force her to earn her stripes in the most punishing way imaginable? Are they willing to risk the financial health of the entire league just to maintain the old, crumbling status quo and send a message that no one player is bigger than the league, even if she actually is? It's a question that hangs over every game, every strange refereeing decision, and every passive-aggressive quote. Is this just a series of amateurish mistakes, or is it calculated sabotage? As the on-court drama intensified, a second war was being fought in the media. On one side, you have major sports personalities, people who understand the business of entertainment, openly calling out the WNBA for its foolishness. They point to the NFL protecting its quarterbacks and the NBA protecting its stars, arguing that safeguarding your main attraction isn't coddling, it's just smart business. They see the jealousy and physical targeting for what it is, a league cannibalizing itself. But on the other side, a strange and defensive narrative began to form, pushed by league loyalists and some veteran players. They tried to frame the cheap shots as just welcome to the league moments and dismissed the unprecedented media coverage as somehow unfair. This media war became even more toxic when some tried to weaponize identity politics to shut down criticism. Any critique of the physicality against Clark or of the players dishing it out was immediately twisted by some into a coded discriminatory attack. It was a cynical and effective way to muddy the waters, forcing a conversation about complex social issues instead of the simple truth: the league was failing to protect its most valuable asset. This manufactured outrage created a bizarre reality where defending a player from being assaulted on the court start was somehow controversial. It was a desperate attempt to control the story, but it only made the league look even more dysfunctional and out of touch. While the league and its defenders fight a media war, they seem to be forgetting about the most powerful force in this entire equation, the fans. The WNBA is not just picking a fight with a 22-year-old player, it's picking a fight with the millions of new consumers she brought with her. And that's a battle they cannot win. This new legion of supporters isn't loyal to the WNBA. They are loyal to Caitlin Clark. They buy tickets to see her. They tune in to watch her. And when they feel she is being disrespected or endangered, they don't just get angry, they walk away. The evidence is undeniable. On social media, every cheap shot or disrespectful comment is met with a tidal wave of backlash. Comment sections are flooded with fans declaring they will stop watching altogether if the league doesn't get its act together. They've become a massive, unofficial watchdog group documenting every uncalled foul and every instance of poor sportsmanship. This creates a doomsday scenario for the league. What happens if Clark, tired of the physical abuse and the drama, decides to play overseas for more money and less hostility? What happens if her army of fans follows her, leaving the WNBA with empty seats, plummeting ratings, and a media rights deal worth a fraction of its potential? The league seems to think it holds all the power, but they are forgetting that the fans hold the ultimate weapon, the remote control and the wallet. The WNBA is now at a point of no return. They were handed a gift, a generational talent with the charisma and skill to transform their league into a major player in the global sports landscape, all on the shoulders of one 22-year-old from Iowa. But instead of lifting her up, they've allowed her to be targeted, disrespected, and cast aside by the very people who stand to benefit the most from her success. They've taken their greatest asset and treated her like an existential threat. The league has created an impossible paradox. The one person who can guarantee their survival is the same person they seem determined to break. The question is no longer if Caitlin Clark can save the WNBA. The question is, what happens when her millions of fans decide she doesn't have to? What happens when the Caitlin Clark effect turns into the Caitlin Clark ultimatum, forcing everyone to choose a side? Because if the league keeps this up, they might find themselves all alone, holding a trophy made of broken narratives and missed opportunities.